the previous rains that we had, are declining. But they came in a bit of time.
They spread it out.
Uniformly in time. But of late, from the 80s, the rainfall is coming in maximum 24-hour events. Then
rains that would have taken months is now falling within a few days.
Yeah. So that's why we're having this deluge in Accra. And to compound things, Accra is a low-lying area. It's difficult to drain because to drain you need to have a gradient. Accra doesn't have much gradient. We have tried to do this. It doesn't have that much gradient. Most of it, even near the coast, is almost flat. And we don't need to pump. That will be very expensive. So the rains are coming in massive intensities, spreading out quickly. But getting it out quickly is a problem because of challenges with the topography. So that's the problem we are facing currently.
But this is worrying. I mean,
it is.
Doc, you've painted a very worrying picture in this very country of ours. And for me, someone listening to us should be concerned. We should be, that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
And what is causing this change? That is where the climate change comes in.
Yeah. What, you see, because the climate is changing and people are building everywhere, you see, it's a lack of planning comes in. Supposing we're planning well, leaving wide stream flows for the waters to go. And then for the water, even if it spreads out, there's nobody there, so it will take time to subside. But all these places have not been taken. So it's a problem where to get the water to go. Because once I served on the technical committee of NADMO, so once I asked this question, that all areas in Accra are being taken. And in case of massive disaster, like earthquake, even in Europe, people are advised to go out. Into parks. Accra here, when such things happen, where are we to run to? Where are the parks for us? The safe havens, where are they? So we have taken almost every space. So compounding this climate change is this our settlement pattern, and then waste disposal. We are very careless in handling waste. So everywhere. So even if we were handling the waste properly, the waters could gradually find their way out from the city. But everywhere is blocked. So it's a question of nature and then anthropogenic matters also arising. So it's multifaceted.
Let's find out from the civil engineer what your take is on these discussions. I mean, on the broad, general way, so that we come to the specifics.
All right. So, good morning to our viewers. Right. With climate change, as Doug said, is dependent on two parameters, which is temperature and rainfall. And with much studies, you realize that I wouldn't even go into studies. Just, I think February here, last February, you could see that the weather was kind of dusty and all that. But then when you count like 5 years back, in February the rains have started and then the weather is already getting more, like moisted. But then this year in February, when you are on the social media, you see that people are commenting who invited Hamatan back, who caused Hamatan back. But that's really a problem we are supposed to look at. And
as a civil engineer, sorry to cut you, but as a civil engineer, do you drive around town, look at Accra and worry or something?
Definitely, especially when you are comparing Accra as a capital city of Ghana to other places that have good infrastructure or good infrastructure outline. like the capital city of Rwanda, Kigali. When you are comparing this, I think Ghana and Kigali or Rwanda are peers. That's you are supposed to be head to head. But then when you are comparing these parameters or you are comparing these kind of places together, you realize that we are far behind in terms of our planning, our execution of building, our type of buildings we put on. So you would see that there are differences. And it's really worried. It's really worried.
Otinio Kwame Bainum is an associate architect at Archetype, and that's an architecture and urban design firm. Otinio, what is your take on this discussion?
Well, hello. Okay, so looking at climate change and how it has impacted the city of Accra, we need to have a broader understanding of how Accra has evolved over time. And in looking at this, we understand that from pre-colonial era, how the settlements came about, how we settled due to farming. We had certain nuclear cities developing around, and how in 1877 these European powers decided to make Accra the capital. And then after independence, we drew an urban plan for Accra. So Accra has a land use master plan that we ought to go by. However,
It has.
it has.
Yeah.
Accra has a master plan.
Definitely.
All three of you have seen it.
Yes.
Accra has a land use master plan that we ought to go by. However, due to rapid urbanization, right, we realize that people are coming into Accra. Infrastructures are springing up. Road networks are being pressured, and all these things. And we are not treating the city as an organism. So we are not going by the principles to evolve. When a city is growing and you treat it as an organism, right? It's an analogy. I mean, the city being like an organism, cells being citizens, and infrastructure being organs and all this. They are interconnected. So as a city develops, if these policies don't grow with the city, then you realize that we are stagnant. And then there is more pressure on what we have. And the key people who play a role in making sure that we go by the land use, that is these the
Commission?
The authorities who are supposed to, they are not playing they are not going by the rules, they are not playing their part in this. And that is where the issue is. Because there are a lot of things that law enforcement need to ensure that's being done in the built environment. That is not being done. And you know, climate change, there are factors that influence climate change. And emissions ought to be looked at. And if you are looking at the carbon footprint of each building here in Accra, you'll be amazed. Because rarely will you find an infrastructure here in Accra that has 60 to 70% greens incorporated in the design.
Cement, concrete.
Rarely will you find it. I mean, when you look at the architecture of Accra, you look at a building, we are heavily reliant on mechanical ventilation rather than going to these tropical. I mean, it's a tropical city. Why are we not using tropical measures to cool our buildings? Air conditions cool the inside and release heat on the outside. We have heat islands in Accra. You look at car parks that don't have shades. You look at hard landscapes that are springing all over Accra. Somebody builds a house and clads the building with tiles, emitting heat. The landscape or the parking area of the house is paved. Heat. No trees, no greeneries, nothing. And all these things all play a role. When we talk about climate change and we talk about flooding in Accra, we are looking at drainage and all that, and that's a huge aspect of it. But it's the small things that we tend to ignore. That plays I mean, look at plastic waste, for instance. You buy gobe, you'll be given a white rubber bag. You'll be given a black one, and if you buy a lot, you'll be given a blue one.
And then they put the white inside, then there's a blue one, then they will use it to tie it. So you walk away with 3.
Beautiful. 1 man, 3.
I went somewhere, I don't remember which country, but you are actually asked if you want plastic, or what is it, Joe Bag or something? Then they will ask you, and then it's like if you requested for plastic, there's a surcharge, you something like
Beautiful.
that.
I think London does that.
Germany too. If you go to Starbucks and you order, and if you go for the plastic option, there are extra charges that you pay for.
Yeah.
You are supposed to recycle that.
So I asked them, I think this has to be in Joburg. So I asked the lady, what is the option? And then she said the trolleys or the whatever,
you
in the
push
supermarket.
you
push it to your car and
car.
put them inside.
Yeah.
But if you want to carry them, wow. Now, but let's come back to what Othniel just touched on. Doc, is it not a mindset issue? Because from what he's saying, the concretization into an urban jungle of Accra is a big problem. But is it not also a sign of wealth? Don't we have that wrong notion that is a sign of wealth? That Charlie Richmond, how can you not have tiles? The ground must be tiled and everything. Is that a rich man? Poor guy, you can leave your house. For poor guy, how are you going to get money to build?
You can.
No, you can't.
No, is it not an attitudinal issue?
Yeah, you see, there must be rules that we should all be governed by, whether you are rich or poor.
True.
So once we abandon the rules, then we are into a big jungle of confusion. You see, like he said, Accra, the planning lags behind the development. Before we develop, we should have looked at the plan, whether it fits into whatever the master plan is. But we build before we look at the master plan, and then the plan has to accommodate what we have done. So that's a major problem. Look, long ago, we said this flooding in Accra, most of it is coming from the mountains. So let's have an impoundment, a dam upstream,
Exactly.
to hold the waters whilst it rains in Accra, so that the minor one, the tertiary, the secondary drains can quickly go into the sea, and when it subsides, they
can release the ones
we
that
can
are
release.
dammed.
They agreed perfectly with us. We proposed it long ago. Now the land is gone.
Now there is no land for us to do the damming.
We have land at Atomic. So we started this Garrett project, but it's stalled somehow. The land keeps dwindling. So we are not sure we can achieve the aim of what we want to do. Hold the water, but how much can we hold? Because the land is almost gone. So we can hold very little. They release it. So this is what I mean by we develop before we look at the plan, and then we try to make the plan adjust itself to fit what we have done. And it doesn't work that way.
So something like this, does this not mean that then Accra is very vulnerable?
Very, very vulnerable. Very,
we
very
are.
vulnerable. Because when you look at stuff like this, what even keeps boggling my mind is you'd see every road construction project that is coming to an effect, you see they have to do demolition. Why is it like that? We don't follow plans.
Yeah, that's what I think that's what Doc gets meant by we are developing and then we are telling the plan to follow us.
Exactly.
Rather than the other way around.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. Every road project that comes on, there has to be a demolition. And as at now, even just look at even the National Cathedral project. They had to demolish part of before they could institute that this. But then you would see that if we had followed plans, this should have been an easy catch, because there would have been enough land to even accommodate government projects and private sector projects. But there is a plan, but it's not being followed.
Do we ever follow plans in this part of the world? Do we ever?
That's our problem.
We have this laissez-faire attitude to following rules and regulations in this country. However, they ought to be followed in order for us to progress. Like you were saying, it's also part of our mindset. For instance, we need to understand the essence of these things. And if you look at the evolution of architecture over time, there was a time where we achieved independence, and Nkrumah brought these modernist architects to influence our way of thinking when it comes to architecture. So when you go to projects that Nkrumah spearheaded, you realize that the designs are different, very tropical. A typical example, a case study, is K University campus. A lot of modernist buildings were put up there. When you go to Osu, there's this courthouse. You look at something like the Great Hall in Kumasi. These buildings were built and designed to respond to climatic issues, and to date, they are still responding to it. My department, for instance, had a building called a Trevelyan block. We didn't need air conditions back then, and we still don't need air conditions to ventilate it today. You understand? It works. But then how do you implant this idea into the mind of an average Ghanaian to go for these typologies, these type of buildings? And that's where there is a disconnect between the architect or the people, the law enforcement body, and the client. Because you need to study the people. Now, I understand this as a designer. You understand this. Look, we are coming from a part of the world where we need to survive. What I need most is a roof over my head. Sustainability, sometimes they say in our part of the world, it's a hoax. Because, Charlie, we need to eat before we think about these things. You understand? So we need to eat before. We are in the now. You understand? We are not thinking ahead. Sometimes you ought to be developed to a certain degree to start looking ahead. But we are in the now. We are in survival mode. So whatever we do right now is for ourselves now in the present state. So if the trend now, and look, see, I found something interesting when I was doing my research on evolution of architecture, and I realized this. What influenced our architecture the most is what we are exposed to.
Yes.
And you realize that there was this era, that is funny, but there was this era that we were exposed to Nigerian movies. Yes. And certain elements in the architecture has been incorporated in ours. And what you're exposed to predominantly becomes who you are and then informs what you do. So that's the issue. So what we are doing in terms of the tiling, the slide, we are copying the wrong things.
Especially when it comes to our ventilation issue. You see, first it was lower blades. But now almost every building has sliding windows. And in Ghana,
if you have money, you have to have sliding windows.
In Ghana,
lower blades is old school.
It's very, very wrong for us.
Mm.
Yes,
it's very wrong.
It's very, very wrong.
You have 50%. A sliding window works like this. It works on this basic principle. You have a window. Let's say this is your window.
Yeah.
You have air coming in. Now, if you have a sliding, you cover half of the amount of ventilation coming in. And this goes all around. So it means that you have 50% of what you ought to get.
Lower blades would have given you all the 100.
Exactly. Even if it's not 100.
Even if it's not like it's the 90-something.
90-something.
But you are getting 50. And these windows, when you go to a lot of buildings that we are renting in Accra, they are not following the standards. For instance, the window size. You have a standard window size that gives you proper ventilation within the space. The window size itself is small because they want to minimize the cost of going for a sliding window. So you realize that a big room, let's say a 4 meters by 4 meters room, and the window size is, let's say, 1.2 by 900, and it's sliding. So it means that you have 1.2 by 450 open constantly with a net behind it.
Yeah, because
and you have your curtains behind it. You definitely buy an AC at the end of the day. And AC too will add up to the climate change. And the hard landscape is adding up. Your gobe plastic bag is adding up.
Emissions are adding up.
Emissions are adding up. The carbon footprint of the buildings here in Accra is wild.
This is scary. It's not a very nice thought at all. Especially when it doesn't look like it is going to change anytime soon. Let's look at the buildings. We'll come back to the water. Let's first look at the buildings. How does the Great Hall look like? I don't recall.
Okay, so
I left campus a long time ago. So, yeah.
So the Great Hall has this massive, let's say
the huge doors.
The huge doors. So you realize that at the base of the Great Hall, you have huge doors that are open.
Yes.
At the top, you have fan lights, right? Operable windows at the top. And you know, to ventilate a proper space, right, you need a stack effect, where the cool air is always downwards and then it takes out the heat, and that goes out through the top. Right, so the Great Hall has used that principle, and it has shaded all its corridors So it means that the solar ingress coming in has been controlled. So you don't have a lot of heat inside. The down is open for cool air to enter. The top is open for hot air to rise out. That's all. You ventilated the greater. A massive building of this nature has this, these basic elements checked out. So you can actually use a greater without putting on the AC. You open the doors underneath and you're good to go.
Wow. Someone had thought.
Yes. A lot of modernist buildings are like that. A lot of tropical architecture is basically it's responding to the climate. So if the building responds to the climate, you yourself, you respond to the building. You realize that there is this connected flow. Yeah. And that's how we ought to survive in nature. Because if you obstruct nature, like he said, there's a dam that you ought to build to hold water. And if you don't, water is like that. If the moment you obstruct nature, you realize that you are at risk. But the only positive sign is that we will survive.
We will survive.
We will survive.
I'm looking at another building. Achimota School's Agri Chapel.
Achimota School.
It just has,
classical architecture.
Yeah, airflows, because it's actually within the arboretum, the forested area of the school. So it's a place that has just a flow.
Constant airflow. And that's one other thing. See, vegetation, right, around your building is key. It is key. I grew up on Tech Campus. Right? My parents were lecturers, so I grew up on Tech Campus. And I lived in these type bungalows. And you realize that because of the thought put in the design of these bungalows, rarely did we have to put on the fan, because we had a lot of vegetation around us.
Exactly.
Like Achimota, you have vegetation. So the impact of the sun is being absorbed by these plants. Yeah. You understand? It's present pure oxygen for you. And there's this flow. It's a beautiful way of living.
You see, I was thinking about this, but then I think it's high time Ghana ought to have a green, like maybe area, maybe a specific area designed for just green buildings, right? This would, even if it wouldn't,
it will show people
exactly
how it should look like.
Exactly, as Otnel was saying. Our decisions are based on what we are exposed to. So if we are exposed to this kind of green area, then it attracts people's mind to that kind of design. You go and tell a client that, okay, or a client comes to you, I want this. He experiences that more. you design, you want to include, no. You want to put things that will be sustainable for him and the environment. He brings up problems. It's cost relative and stuff. And they had to, what's they do? You see, somebody would build on one plot of land, let's say 90 by 75 or something like that. Then he probably builds on kind of a sizable portion. Then he tiles the whole compound.
Yeah, because we don't want the children to sweep.
Exactly.
Waking up in the morning and sweeping, that's like old school kind of compound house.
Exactly. So
rich people don't do that.
If you wouldn't do that, there are more sustainable stuff you can do, like pavement blocks. You use that, and then maybe just a few portion of the stuff or the compound, you pave that probably where your car park is. Then the rest you plant trees or maybe what's the name? Green grass. That would be more sustainable than just tiling the whole compound. And it's not even tiling the whole compound, they tile the walls too in addition.
Dr. Ebenezer Mankwa is an urban geographer and a senior lecturer at the Geography and Resource Development Department of the University of Ghana. He joins us via online. Zoom is Dr. Abankwa. Good morning and welcome to ZFM.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Doc, Accra and climate change. What is your general take on Accra? Are we in danger? What does the current situation look like from where you are?
Okay, thank you. I joined a bit late, so I'm sure my colleagues might have touched on some of these issues. But I want to look at it from two perspectives. The first is our urbanization process. And the second is our land use planning and development planning. And why do I want to start with urbanization? You see, we are in a part of the world where we are urbanizing without economic development. Have you ever wondered why in the developed world they have well-planned cities, better life, and all of the social amenities that people need? It's because the urbanization is driven by the kind of industrialization and economic development that people can move to places and then they get access to jobs, access to opportunities, access to good healthcare. But in our part of the world, people are coming to the cities are urbanizing, and we don't have that necessary infrastructure, that industrialization enclave to be able to absorb these urban population. And so you find a situation where people come to the city and then they find themselves in the informal sector. And so you go to town and then there's traffic congestion, people are selling on the roads. So the kind of city that we are seeing is a function, is a function of so many factors where people are coming to the city and then the city is not in the capacity to be able to provide what they need, what we call the bright light syndrome. As we are speaking now, people are picking their bags, they are coming to the city. What are they coming to do? They are just coming to survive. But elsewhere in the developed world, they have planned their cities such that these cities have that equity in the distribution of the resources, the development impulses, and so people go there and then they know they are going to get jobs. In Accra, everybody is coming. Accra is more like a primate city. And what primacy does is that it serves as a magnetic pole that attracts people. And usually primacy will not be able to give the kind of expectations and wishes that people want. So we need, my take about your question is that we need to rethink our whole urbanization process. And because most of the issues that we are facing in Accra is because of how we are urbanizing. We are urbanizing without the necessary developmental impulses to be able to help people live the kind of life you want. So it rains a little and there's flooding because the housing is a problem. People are not living in good housing facilities. They don't have proper sanitation. They don't have waste disposal systems. You know, you go to education centers, people are sitting under trees. Why? Because we've not created that infrastructure that is commensurate to the kind of population explosion that we are seeing. You go to health facilities, no bed syndromes and all of this. So all of these challenges that we see, they are symptoms of a dysfunctional urban system. And until we address this urban challenge, the urbanization process, how we are urbanizing as a city, then we are not going anywhere. The second point I want to emphasize is the land use planning. You know, we have architects, we have engineers, we have the MMDAs, the Metropolitan Municipal District Assemblies, and they are supposed to have these planners at these different layers of government or of governance. But then what do we see? We see a lot of interferences in their work. So you may have the land use plan, you may have the physical plan, you may have the spatial plans, but then development is not done recourse to these plans. And so you see people building in waterways, you see people building in areas that are wetlands or that are Ramsar sites. These are all ecological protected zones that serve ecological purposes in our cities. But if you reclaim all these areas, then of course it rains a little, and then there's a whole runoff and the whole place gets flooded. Now, you may not experience rains in certain parts of Accra, but then because of rains coming from the hills, all the way through the Onyinase, to the Achimota, all those places, and then those places get flooded. Why? Because, I mean, there's a lot of encroachment, and people are building without recourse to this land use plan. So we need to tackle these two areas, and then, among other things, I think if we're able to do that, we'll be able to deal with some of the symptoms that we see as the problems. They are just symptoms, but then there are underlying factors and forces that need to be addressed if we are to make any headway.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ebenezer Amankwa is joining us via Zoom. Let me come to the studios and pick the mind of engineer Joe Boachi. Let me find out, being an hydrologist, understanding the way water is supposed to run through this place, are you surprised by the constant floods we see these days?
Naturally, yes.
Could something have been done about them?
Oh, yes. Because you see, like I said, water will always find its way, whether you allow it or not.
Definitely.
So the best way is to leave the stream and the surroundings untapped, and then the water will naturally flow to wherever it wants to go. But if you start to divert the ways you start to encroach, then the water must find its level. So what we are doing is that we are trying to recreate river courses in Accra. And that is not good for us. Like the doctor said, wetlands. The wetlands were quite useful because there were places for exchange of water. The water will accumulate there, and after some time, it will get back to the drains, and then it goes away. Now it's no longer there. It's all filled with houses. So where should the water go? So obviously, I am surprised. We've tried, but it's not good enough. You see the Accra drains, the circle drains that were done long ago. I was part of it. We tried to at least find a way for the waters to go to the sea. We lined them. Yeah. Rectangular. We did it. We wanted to do it trapezoidal, but the contractor said he could do it at the same cost. So it's okay, go ahead, because it's more expensive doing it rectangular than trapezoidal. So we've done all those things, but the bottom line is that there are places we could not get enough land to open up the drains.
Okay.
There were places we could not get enough land. And there's a problem now, even trying to clean the drains, because there's no land for the excavators or whatever to maneuver. There's no land on the sides of the drains. I've been there, we've been called, but they can't get access. Because where do they pass to get into the drains to hook this thing?
In terms of water, Doc.
In terms of water, yeah.
Are you saying there's no hope?
I'm not saying there's no hope. We have to change our attitude. We have to change our attitude. We have to make sure that this environmental degradation, we are very careful throwing away whatever plastics into the drains. We have to be very careful about them, because once they get choked, and the drains are not wide enough, so they will enter into people's homes and cause havoc. There's hope, because we are trying. The garlic problem is one area we thought we could alleviate some of these things, hold the water there until the area is somehow gone down, and then you release the water gradually. So there's hope.
Unfortunately, you can't talk about this thing without talking about government.
Yes.
It's something you cannot not talk about. What role has government played over the years in these things that we're discussing here, Doc?
You see, the Accra drains, government funded them. This Garrick project I'm talking about is for the government.
And you said it's stalled.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
What happened?
I have no idea. I was part of it.
You were the technical people, but you were not part of those.
The decision making.
I can understand.
Yeah. But the government, our governments have been trying their best. But the land issue is my problem. The land, where to get the land? Even if you today have the money that you want to widen the drains, how do you do it without pulling down houses? How do you do it? So we are constrained by technology, and you can't go deep, because, like I said, Accra doesn't have that gradient. So you go deep, the water will stay there because it can't flow.
Averagely, our elevation in Accra is about 22 meters, and that's
so steep enough.
Exactly.
So you can't go
unless you give it trenches.
Yeah.
Like
Dr. Mankwa, if you can hear us, would you say governments over the years have done enough to build resilience to combat the impact of climate-related disasters in this country?
Yes, thank you very much.
Mankwa is with the University of Ghana. He's actually an urban geographer as well as also a senior lecturer at the Geography and Resource Development Department of the University of Ghana. Let me come back into the studios and find out from Othniel, who is an associate architect at Archetype. That's an architecture and urban design firm. Let me find out, what infrastructure investments do you think are needed to protect communities from climate-related disasters?
Well, a lot has been said, but in terms of infrastructure investments, right, we need to look at how best we can incorporate this idea of using our rural or tropical materials in putting up our structure, in the sense that we need to start thinking inward, looking at the kind of materials that we need to build these buildings to make it eco-friendly.
Yep.
We look at how we can incorporate, because before...
We use mud?
Not necessarily. I mean, I'm not a fan of the brown palette when it comes to African architecture.
Well,
but
because of the beauty or functionality?
Oh, because
are we looking at aesthetics or functionality?
Functionality, yes, it works. But in terms of how it's being applied and how it's even going to be put up, there's this tiny discrepancy with the people who are going to build it and those who are going to use it. So that link has to be established. Using brick is also a good thing. Using terracotta is also a good thing. We need to start thinking of the materials that we use to build. Once we are thinking of using sustainable materials, we can, like the good doctor said, we need to start thinking about how we can work with this issue in the micro level. The buildings that we put up, the communities that we build, our neighborhoods, how we can use these sustainable materials to put up our infrastructure, how we can reduce these heat zones, right, within our neighborhoods, how we can inculcate this green urban landscape within our neighborhoods. When we start putting up these infrastructure, we start working at it from the micro level. As a designer, if you're working on a project, you look at the client, you look at the space, look at the interior before you come to focus on the exterior. So let's start, we need to start deep, because like the good doctor says, the attitude that we ought to change. And in spatial research, you realize that the space you tend to find yourself in affects your psyche. It affects your psyche. It affects the way you think. If you're in a good environment, you feel good. So if we want people to start changing the attitude, we want to look at this issue and start working at it from the onset. As we are doing the infrastructure at the macro level, we are looking at the road networks, the drainage and all that. Let's focus on the spaces that we give people, what they put into the spaces, and how that space affects them. So more greens, I mean, research backs it that more greens affects our psyche, affects the way we think, puts us in a good mood. The materials that we use to build also affects it. So these kind of small infrastructures in the micro level need to be put in place too. And shades, greens, the urban city, it's important to have these things in the urban fabric so that we work on our carbon emissions as well.
So it's possible that that statement that Dr. Akwesi also made some time back, the chief psychiatrist, that 2.3 million Ghanaians are mad, in quotes. Probably our environment is playing a role in our
It's playing a major role. I was telling a client the other day that the space you wake up in has an impact on you. The research is there. Even the color of your walls plays a role. The openings that you look out to. If you wake up in the morning and you don't have anything, I mean...
If the first thing you see is a dustbin, like a rubbish dump.
I do. You understand? That's how it works. I mean, it's a simple thing. So somebody like myself, for instance, I've placed certain potted plants around my interior space to also affect my mood in the morning. I like the morning sun. It's paramount that you wake up to the morning sun. It's important that you expose yourself to these things. These natural things, they have an impact on you. You understand? They have huge impact on us in the way we think. So it's important that we incorporate all these things in our design. We let people understand that these things are extremely important.
Yes.
And then we grow beyond that. Then once we've solved our spaces, then we look at the space around us.
Exactly.
In my neighborhood, where are the trees? Where are my greens? Okay, let's start addressing that. What kind of material am I using to clad my building? Once that's addressed, then we go into the macro. Okay, how's my drainage like? Because if you know how to put these things in place, then you realize that we are growing inward. And it helps. It helps a lot.
Talking of materials, what is this thing about bamboo?
The research on bamboo. Bamboo is a material that a lot of architects are fascinated about. It stems from this Japanese architecture where they use a lot of bamboo to do these interior spaces and all those things, and it's very good. It's durable. That bamboo is equally as durable as steel.
Yes, I've heard that. That's why I asked that question.
You will be surprised to know that the tensile stress of bamboo is actually higher than that of steel by some small margin.
You mean iron rod? What we call iron rod? Yes. What is the inches? You mean the 16 bamboo, 16 mm and those 32 mm?
Yes, but it has to be treated properly.
The bamboo must be treated
properly. It
properly.
needs maintenance. It needs attention. See, that's the culture that we don't have, unfortunately. Paying attention to these things. You need to pay attention to bamboo. If you do a bamboo facade, you can't leave it there like that. You understand? So bamboo is one of the materials that's making waves. But once again, you have to insert this idea into the minds of people and let them understand that bamboo is important. Bamboo can also work.
Yes.
How do you achieve that?
That's why I like this idea of let's do models.
Do you believe
show people?
Tanzania, they were using bamboos to convey water, just like we are using Interplast and what? They bore through and then joined them.
They don't have pipes, plastic.
They were using bamboo.
They will use bamboo.
Bamboos. They bore through. You see, there are locks inside.
Yeah. Bamboo has
some
locks.
So they have augers to,
You see, there are some
and
trees.
then they join them.
There are some
just trees.
Like I don't know whether it's the same bamboo or some. There are some trees in the forest. When you cut a certain portion of it, the water drips out. So there's this research too that they use that kind of tree that contains water. It's like it has a lining inside.
Exactly.
And that gives that kind of way through it for.
So instead
water
of using plastic. Pipes, they would use nature's own pipes.
Bamboos in
There's a reason why these
Tanzania.
are all far-fetched ideas when it comes to our type of architecture, because it's hard to have people on board with these kind of materials, because where we are now, survival mode, if you come and tell me that I need bamboo, it's a hassle.
We use bamboo to hold the, when we are doing decking.
Yes.
Yeah, there's this building. When I was doing research in the Volta region, I came across this interesting concept where they were building balconies by using a particular tree. So the tree grows in a unique way where it creates a Y shape in the middle. Then they will lay in the bamboo and put their
touch.
Yeah, the touch on it, and that's how they create their balconies. I have this. Let me see if I have a photo here.
Wow.
So that was an interesting bit, and it's all over the town. Yeah, it is it.
So what you're saying is we should use what we have.
We should use what we have
to create the buildings and facilities that we will use.
Yes.
So that it becomes like the town or the city becomes part of nature.
Yes.
It shouldn't be too different. But what you're saying is that, because you made a statement, and it's true, that Accra is a tropical city. So we should have, that's a key word, we should have built it like a tropical city, not like what we have now. So then Accra would have looked like something you would see in maybe Singapore, Thailand. When you go to Southeast Asia, they have these buildings that look like they are part of the environment itself. But we've become, because if you have money and easily gone, how can you build a house that hasn't got air condition and nature? No, you are not rich like that.
But that's a true luxury.
That's a good one.
That's a true luxury. Luxury itself is when comfort is at its maximum. And that is the true luxury. When you live in a space and there's this seamless synergy between you and the landscape around you, that's beautiful. That's luxury. That's what people in the West are trying so hard to achieve.
Exactly. I was coming to say something. You see, what even makes these days real estate very important is kind of the view you wake up to. We fail to understand why the Westerners or the whites would be like, okay, today I want to wake up to the sunrise, or I want to see the sunfall. It gives you this peace of mind that you are able to think well, that you are able to function well as a human being. Do you know, stress?
My brother, isn't our socioeconomic status part of the guy woke up. He's already late too because he has to do some blah. You want him to look at the sun and smile, and the sun will hit his face. That's for Othniel and these guys. But guy is looking at the sun.
I'm also a hustler. I'm also a hustler. But the key thing is that, like we are all saying here, these are beautiful ideas. But I like the doctor's submission in the sense that, see, we need to have a base to accommodate all these ideas. And that's when the city has been industrialized to a certain degree where everybody is comfortable, and then we can start thinking further. So there was a submission by Jordan Peterson, when he was on Piers Morgan's show, and he was talking about sustainability being a hoax. And he said, look, sustainability seems like it's for the wealthy, the rich, the developed. Because when you come back to our setting, right, sustainability is non-existent because we are thinking about how we survive today and tomorrow. You understand? So we need to get to a degree where we are industrialized to a degree where our economic structure is good. We are all making decent amounts of money, or we are making decent profit. Then we can start looking beyond that. Naturally, that's how it works. If we've not established those...
So what, Maslow's hierarchy comes
of needs. Exactly. So if we've not established those things, these things that we are talking about, material, using bamboo, considering brick and all that. Look, I just need a roof over my head.
Let's settle that first.
Yes, let's settle that.
Look at green grass and the flowers and
so if the country is constantly running at a deficit where we have a lot of people economically who are not empowered, then these issues are going to be there. They are going to be constant. So we need to...
Let me pick your mind on this very issue. What do you think of that? The economic, socio-economic status and climate resilience that we're having.
Yeah, what Otsel is saying is true. It's very true, because you ought to feed before you think about, okay, is everything all right? You wake up on a hungry stomach and you don't even seem to mind whether
the sun is up or not. Who cares whether the sun came up?
Exactly. So it's very true, because as Otsel was saying, it's like that. Sustainability comes with, or it goes with the elite. But then I feel like if we had structured our country very well at the beginning, this shouldn't have been a problem. Because at this point, it's a mindset problem. If our mindset was tailored towards that, even if you wake up and you don't have anything to do, you still think about the
if it has started from the beginning,
exactly.
It became part of you.
Exactly.
Now, regardless of your economic status, I get that.
I feel like we can still make a move by starting with these young ones coming up, and
I'm sure we'll come to education.
Yes. Like in Europe, everywhere is developed, but you see, white man says, "Oh, I've lived there for a long. I'm moving out. I want to change the environment." You see, the place is nice.
He can afford to. Here he can't. Here, Nabo said people in low-lying areas should actually relocate up. They cannot afford, so they will still be in a low-lying area. I mean, you are going upstairs to go and rent.
No, for the rains to come.
One of the things you said, which I still think we need to think about, is making greenery or sustainability aspirational. Build it somewhere and let those of us coming up who are now about to build look at it and say, this, I think when I have money to build, I'll build the like way Othniel is talking about. Yes. Right? Now let's come to water management systems. How do we, as a people, how can we develop climate resilient water management systems to ensure these things don't happen to us? Yeah. What are currently our water management systems in this country?
Yeah, you see, we have streams all over the country, and we tap water from these water resources to feed the people. Unfortunately, the stream flows are going down, so we are thinking of a lot of things. For example, Cape Coast, there's always water deficiency from Kakum, because the river itself is not able to sustain the city. So there's a cross-sectorial water treatment. We bring water from Pra all the way to Kakum to treat, because the machines are there already to treat the water. So we cross the water. These are some of the management issues we are putting in place. There's enough water in the Pra going to the sea. Kakum, there isn't enough. So why not pump? Yeah, divert some to Kakum, treat, and then the people in Cape Coast and Elmina will have enough water. So these are some of the things we are doing bringing the water from one part to the other. You see, Accra is in a dry area. It doesn't rain very much in this coastal area from Cape Tree Point to Togo border there. It doesn't. So even here, we also import water, because Accra water is coming from the water. So it's not waters that are within
Accra,
we import,
but we also cross
the waters.
That's
we bring, from the Densu, we bring from other places. So that's how we try to satisfy the populations. Where there's not enough and we have excess somewhere, we try, bring it and then try.
Let me ask two very, unfortunately, they were not supposed to be political, but because of recent pronouncements, they are becoming political. I remember in my days on Tech Campus, during the days of Prof. Andam, there was a call for moving of the capital, maybe not the commercial, but administrative, to somewhere else.
He was so passionate about it.
Yeah. That's why I could remember it was Professor Andam, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So that's why I could call his name directly. I still recall because he was very passionate. I think I even saw a paper where he had a list of what we should look out for in moving our capital city. Like, I remember I said it must be by a water body, this distance, it must be this, it must be. He had a brilliant idea. Eventually, he became a VC before we left, and I think he passed that way or something. Now, do you think, all three of you, that this would also help if we move and go look for a higher ground than the flat Accra and start looking for something? What are your thoughts on this, all three of you?
In this issue, what we've noticed or we've realized is a constant is the attitude of people. Let's say we move to Kumasi, we fix everything here. You realize that the issue will still surface because the attitude of people hasn't been fixed or addressed. The way we view our urban cities, the way we approach it, the way we urbanize it hasn't been addressed. So the issue will still show. It will still come up unless we change our attitude. It's not where we put the capital, you understand? It's those in the capital, those around the capital that need to change their mindset. So Andam's submission, which I've also come across, was brilliant. It might work to a certain degree, but I feel maintaining it will be the problem, and it will collapse because of the attitude.
The people.
You see, we have brilliant laws in this country, but we don't enforce them. Until we enforce the laws, no matter where we move to, we carry our chaos there. we carry our chaos there. So much as me, I advocate for infrastructure development and then attitudinal change. They
must work together.
They must work together, and then enforcement of laws. This is where we are lacking. Infrastructure is lacking. Attitude, we are very bad. Laws are not enforced. But in Europe, these things, merge. Laws are enforced. People, they know what they are doing. Infrastructure, they do it to support the people. All the three are in synergy. Here, no. Laws are not enforced. Infrastructure lags behind. Our attitude, very bad. So once we address these things, then the capital can be in Accra. But until we address these things, we can move it to Tamale. We will carry our chaos there.
Carry our chaos. Okay.
I feel like, you see, where in Ghana, where it's a big city that doesn't experience what Accra is experiencing, Tamale, they experience the same thing, flooding.
Yeah, Kumasi, yesterday we did an interview. This
exactly,
week, yeah,
experience the same thing. Even Cape Coast.
Yeah, Study too. We called Study as well. Yeah. They also had complaints.
So I feel like if you look at the person and the person doesn't want to change, you force the person to change. That's the loss. So I feel like all this problem, if we have an institution that will really, really, really enforce the laws we have in Ghana, it will work. Even with the small infrastructure we have, things will go right.
But are the laws really there? I'm asking because I have this former landlord who was so heavy in greenery. And so one time I was having an issue with him. We were having a discussion and he said he lived in Canada for a long time before he came back to Ghana. And he said the law was such that there was a percentage of your frontage or something.
Front yard.
Yeah, that had to be grass or something. They will measure and make sure that. And then he was telling me, where do you think political parties put their, when they are campaigning, their little signboards and things. He said, if you didn't have that greenery or that part, you don't have green grass there, where were they going to put their vote for this person? And so it was so important to everybody that everybody had it. And he comes to Ghana and he's surprised that rich people cement their whole house. The question is, are the laws really there that we are not enforcing? Because if I have my own money and I build my own house, how dare you tell me I use 70% grass and 20% stones and 10% something? It's my own money. I can do grass if I want and do cement. Are there laws like this?
Exactly. You see, what you are thinking is your own money and is your own distance. If we have this, that's the attitude and that's the mindset. But then if we are able to change this, there are laws that in Ghana that says that this percent of road should be left off on a road, right? So before you build, you have to leave this
space between your house and the road.
But then we don't mind.
Even water bodies.
Exactly.
We have to have a distance. About 40 meters, or it's all there.
The service plots that are located in front of every infrastructure. And once that is being addressed, then you have that clear space. If the road ought to expand, it expands into
that's
that.
Right.
And one other thing that, I don't know, I notice it a lot because, once again, a hustler, I've been working. Whenever I walk, to my place or walk around, you realize that you are basically walking in the road because tall fronts have been built in the where they're supposed to be.
Ghana pedestrian share.
And we are walking in the road. That has annoyed me since day one. Because at any point in time, there's a car coming, you have to adjust yourself. Yeah. You understand? And that's not the case. So like he's saying, the service plots, it has to be, but somebody like, we are survival mode, you have to put a shop there.
You don't have to put a shop there.
If you don't have to put a shop there.
What's the space doing there?
That space, we'll do hedges and put some nice barbed wire there so that you walk in front of our house, walk on the road.
Yeah.
You put you see what
you realize that the shop, we've sprayed it, or we've written on it, remove this and this and that by AMA.
No, now it is an invitation for you to come to the office.
Yeah.
For any house you see removed by something, it is an invitation. You come to the office for us.
Because when you meet a client and they tell you, I want to build on this plot, Mr. Mr. Jenim Neman, I'm the shops basically.
It's true. It's true.
They tell you. Yeah, they tell me. Mr. Jenim, I coined the name ho. I'm the shops about.
I see.
Oh, you get that a lot.
We've been that commercialized.
Yeah, and we see this coming up. We see it coming up a lot.
Wow.
A lot of people design and leave the frontage for shops for commercial activities. It's coming up. And this, from the planning laws, it has to be addressed. You have to look at it. Because then what are you putting up? Is that a mixed-use facility or residential facility? How are we addressing this?
It is your house with a shop in front. don't speak big English. Misuse facility. No, it is a guy's house. He has a shop in front.
But that's all right.
They will open a small neighborhood mom and pop shop, and then the house help will sit there or something, so that somebody is busy. It's all showing that you are upwardly mobile financially.
So that's the case.
That's
everything has to be addressed. See, what we call culture these days is just something that I feel is an excuse. I mean, if you keep on doing the wrong thing, then call it culture.
No.
You understand? And it becomes part of you, do we call it culture? So if we don't address this, wherever we carry the capital to, the issues will come.
Like,
issues will
where you know
itself.
that we really have a big problem as Ghanaians or as citizens of Ghana with the attitudinal way of our thinking is the Medina Zongo Junction.
Why they did it over whatever.
Exactly.
We don't want to work on it again.
No.
Why?
Well, we want to cross the road again.
So what I realized that could it also be a design flaw? I mean, coming from the point of view of a designer, if you are designing something, you study the people, you study their movement, their behavior, and then you provide something that blends in with their movement pattern. So if you realize that what you do is obstructing their pattern, and rather you have to then force them to use it. In some cases, some designers would argue that it's a design flaw.
Okay, so
Yeah, but what else can you do at Medina's Zongo Junction?
That's a challenge of design.
They must walk up, whether they like it or they must walk up.
That's a challenge of
But the
design.
sighting is probably what he's talking about, where it was sighted.
Where it was cited.
Yes,
Yeah,
but
it's what-
where it is sighted is where they cross the road on the ground. I've seen them.
I mean, the same thing to this in Kumasi Tech Junction. You realize that they've done this footbridge, but still you realize the fence that they've done, no.
let's take the one in front of Accra Mall, for example. That one we would say that is very perfect. There's no long distance that you have to walk.
They just have to climb.
Yes,
And then, yeah.
but there's still people cross the road.
Those basic behavior.
You see, you have to.
But have you caught someone, punished them, made them an example to people so that they will deter them
At
from...
Medina Zongo Junction, they are there lashing people, but they will still cross.
Like you said,
What's the
you
task force there? They are holding keys.
You have to study the pattern,
Yeah.
the way the people live, and then you couch your laws. When I was the chief executive, Community Water and Sanitation Agency, you see, we were trying to give the rural people water, boreholes, and then hand dug wells. So it came, we realized that they had their own traditional sources of water, some streams, some lakes, and what have you. So we have to have it closer to the community than those traditional sources. Otherwise, if it's to cross a river to fetch from a borehole, you must as well fetch from the river.
rivers, yeah.
So you see, you have to consider all these things and eliminate them. Once he crosses why should he cross the river to go and fetch from the borehole? Then he must as well fetch from the traditional source. So bring it closer to him.
Exactly.
So these are some of the things
that you need to. And when we do the right thing,
Yes.
and we look at the patterns and we design accordingly,
Yeah.
you realize that they are being
Yeah,
utilized.
in
And
all the rural communities,
Yeah.
they use our systems. Yeah, because you don't have to walk more than 500 meters. These were rules we developed that every system we are putting in, it mustn't be more than 500 meters from the village. And they don't have to cross any of the traditional sources of water. Otherwise, they will be tempted to use those. So once you study the people and then do these things, the development in line with it, then
and that's basically what urban design
Yeah.
is about.
They-
When you are designing the urban fabric, you study the pattern, you study the flow, you study movement, you study behavior before you come up with design solutions. If you do not study these things,
yeah.
you,
I mean, someone has said.
Yeah, with that, I was reading a study, right, during my research. I realized that where people litter around, there's a type of drainage system you give them, where aside our normal big drainage, or should I say gutter, that we have by the roadside, they have a smaller one just immediate by the roadside. That one is not covered. Then they put small pipes that links to the big one, which is covered. Then at the tip of the the pipe, they put nets. So that one is easy to clean. So it's easier to clean and dredge it. Then the water, when it comes in, it seeps to the other side and flows away.
Mr. Civil Engineer, why are gutters majorly open?
Okay, so
we don't know any better. All we know is open gutters.
No, we know better, but then mostly is how to dredge it. That's our.
We have thought on this for a long time. Ghana Institution of Engineers.
Yeah. Yes,
it's not the first time you are asking these things. Sometimes they try it, but our attitude is like that, and the development, the infrastructure systems in the cities are such that we haven't paved the areas. So with one rainfall, the dust will fill the gutters. The dust. Europe, they've virtually paved everywhere. So dust doesn't go much.
To go block.
Yeah, to block.
The drains.
Yeah, but here it's all muddy. So all the mud goes into the drains, and they block.
Little rain.
Yeah. The problem why they don't close majorly is because of how to dredge it, in case it blocks. But then with this system I'm talking about is very efficient with places they've used it so far, that should I say every 2 weeks that they come to dredge the openings of the distance. So when the rain comes, it goes through the bigger one and it goes away. The dust and then the rubbish we produce wouldn't get into the bigger drains. It's just a smaller one. If the bigger one is like 400, 450 drainage, you do this one like 250. Then you are able to accommodate that. So it's
interesting.
It's a very good design, I've seen.
What are the economic benefits of investing in climate resilience, and how can we make a business case for it? Why should corporate Ghana be interested in investing in climate resilience?
I think it helps save cost.
Okay.
Yeah. Cost is
that's cost.
It helps save cost. That's
in what way?
Because if we are able to create a climate resilient Ghana, we wouldn't be spending more on flood incentives, like given to the flood affected people. You realize that we spend more in these incentives than even spending on the major problem itself. So if we are able to save that cost, we are able to expand our self. And then number two, I feel like it helps attract investors. You imagine that Ghana had a kind of the green area I'm talking about. Tesla will come in, okay, we will provide you with emission-free shuttle. You see that it attracts the investments, outside investment and all those stuff. So it's linked. It's linked.
These ideas are supposed to be in everybody's head. It's in your head. It should be in some guy's head somewhere. How have we not said that? You know what? Let's go look for some place, because this country has so much land. Let's go look for some place and initiate it. Let's start with one building. One building, one green building designed well by some good architects, and then use it as a model and start expanding.
I think Tech has one just recently. I think it's been commissioned, right?
Which one?
That green building is fully solar. There's nothing of emissions, but then I think they still have ACs or something.
ACs on,
but then
the new architecture department.
Yeah,
building.
It's fully solar.
Oh wow! Well, like what you said, how it makes sense to business investors. One, you save cost.
Yeah.
That one, yes, paramount. You save cost in the sense that if you pay attention to these things, you don't spend much on mechanical ventilation. You don't spend much on reducing your carbon footprint. You prevent other things from happening. For instance, flood. Because if flood affects your building right now as a business entity, waboka. You understand?
It's true. Graphic Road. Anytime it floods,
You understand?
the vehicles, Toyota, all
that.
those vehicles. Yeah, it's
Prevent that, and you prolong the lifespan of your building by addressing these minor issues. So you realize that when you look at the Apple headquarters, it's a beacon of eco-friendly design. When you look at it, why? Because it's now what they've done that because they want to prolong their building. The things that they are producing has an impact or emission that is produced. So they want to address those issues by bringing a building for that kind of like adds up to the urban fabric. So once you do that, it addresses the issue. And your issue about us building one prototype and everybody learning, I like that. Because personally, I believe that's a principle. That's how we learn. We learn by what we see, what we are exposed to. So if we see one project that's working, that's why I've always advocated for us to use these principles in designing our low-income housing residents. For instance, for Tema. Tema was designed on these principles. You understand? So when we are designing our low-income residents, our low-income housing projects, realize that when we incorporate these things, or not just even low-income, our housing schemes, like let's say affordable housing is this green microclimate that we've created with urban, with landscaping, with rich natural materials that we are using in the design. When it's there and it's working, people learn from it. Oh, me pay when be. Oh, affordable housing, that material no we and no me pay. You understand?
It becomes aspirational. People want to.
That's how you slowly infuse this idea of living this sustainable, and it's for a certain group of people, a certain class of people. And if they can live in a sustainable environment, then we can also live in a sustainable environment. And that's how you infuse the idea. That's how you grow from there. So you need to insert this idea into the minds of people.
Yeah, the economic aspect, like there, say if we had say early warning systems.
Okay.
In the system, like we'll be warned, and then we will avoid a lot of losses in the system. Early warning, the rains are coming, then there's a warning that when it reaches this level, it will flood. We can evacuate people, so we can avoid a lot of losses. And these early warning systems, if we can predict now the climate is changing, the onset of rain, the farmers can adapt quickly to it. That, oh, these days it's not safe to plant in March. Let's plant in. Okay. So we can plan, and economically it becomes beneficial to the farmers. So there are so many economic distances if we become climate resilient with early warning systems, with planning, we cut costs, and then we can increase productivity.
So with what Doc is saying, I did a research on flood vulnerability in Greater Accra, warning, mitigation, and then management, right? We used Google Earth Engine. It's an AI. You code, it gives you a picture terrain of how this place looks like before flooding and how it looks like after flooding. So you are able to measure the amount of area that gets flooded before even the flood would come. So with that, if we are able to incorporate this into our system, which is able to give us the X amount of places that will get flooded, then we are able to evacuate and put things in order. But then we are not doing that because I feel like we should have gotten research hubs that would conduct these kind of researches into deep, and then we would be able to invest in their solutions that they bring on. But then it's just about theory.
Interesting. You brought it up. We'll be going into that as well. So it's just about a minute past the quarter. Yes, we're going all the way to the top of the hour. But something just came to mind whilst you're talking about the research bit. What are the challenges, Doc? Let me come to you on that. What are the challenges that academia or research institutions face in coming up with the kind of information we need to build the kind of policies that we would need to make sure that we are better able as a people to manage climate change?
You see, research will point the best way to go about things, but it shouldn't end there. There must be prototypes, there must be models, but so the link between what I've written and what should be done, there's a disconnect.
It's been there. Academia and industry have always had that gap.
Yeah.
So we're saying that it's still there.
Yes, it is, because you need to model it, and then when people see how profitable it is or how well the thing is working, then they will replicate. But in most cases, the money even to build the model, the prototype, is where we have a problem. Like Otina is saying, we have the plans, but why are they not building them? Because I need investment. People have to, the businessman must be convinced as to why he must spend his money in building that prototype. He must be convinced, what will I get out of this prototype? So he will consider a lot of risk and will not do it. So this is the disconnect. But if the government, in Europe, the government will take it up, let me do the model. People come and see how it's working, and then people can take it up. Here, no government will build any prototype. But the private man will not also risk his money.
What's in it for him?
Yeah, I mean, it's risky business building a prototype.
Yes.
In Brasilia, for instance, when the city was about to develop, they had elected a new president. He contracted his architect, Oscar Niemeyer, to put up their model city for Brasilia, where they were going to build these infrastructure that were going to address these modernist issues at that time. They did it, but it wasn't working. It's still seen today as one of, I mean, it's a masterpiece of a design, but it's still seen today as one of the biggest failures in urban design.
Why?
They fail to understand the people. Without that in mind, you build a city. Think, I mean, as educated people, we come from this angle where we know what ought to be done.
Yeah.
You understand? And we build this per what we understand ought to be done, and then we put a structure there, and then the people, they don't see it that way, because there's a disconnect between their culture and what you build. When you look at the favelas in Brazil and what they built in Brasilia, there's a disconnect. So they can't move from the favelas and just come straight into Brasilia.
And the favelas are important for producing the Viniciuses and the Rodriguez. Yeah, so I get what you're saying, that if you are going to modernize, you should have looked at the design of a favela and how it relates, and then bring your
once there's that disconnect. So you need to make people understand that we need to move from A to B. Once they understand, and then B looks like, okay, it's similar to A, but it's an improvement.
Then we'll run with it. Otherwise, we're in trouble.
Because you see how people can move from Ghana and go to Canada and the US and function in a system.
Yes.
They're not littering around. Why? Because the system works, they understand it.
But if you don't see any rubbish, it will be difficult to drop rubbish now.
Beautiful.
That is it.
So now if you are doing B, you need to put in a system, a structured system, where authorities are going to ensure that this and this is going to be done. But that system is based on the principles of A. So when they move into it and it's structured, it works.
You know why I can appreciate this thing you're saying? I did a Greek. Horticulture was one of my subjects, and I remember in gardening and in layouts or something, there was a course like that. We were told that when you are designing a place, the greenery, plant the grass and let the people use it by their path that they walk on. Then now you can go and put the pavement blocks along that path. But you know what we see in Ghana? We design and put the pavement blocks and the people walk on that side. So you see the pavement blocks nicely there that nobody's using it.
It's true.
So I can understand what you're saying. That
human behavior is important. It's the key to a good design. Once the design connects, I mean, when I look at a design, I'm not looking at the facade, the extravagant thing that we put. It's how it connects with the people.
Yeah.
If the space connects with the person occupying the space, brilliant, you've scored. But if we have that disconnect, you realize our buildings and so that it doesn't create a good environment.
Amazing.
So what we need to do, moving forward, the basic thing that we need to do, if we are going to improve infrastructure, if we are going to add this and this and this and that, understand the fabric, understand the existing conditions, use that to come up with a proposal. You understand? That is based on that, and then we can grow into that. And then the system, the authorities need to enforce. See, if the rules are not being enforced, the system won't work. That's how come we can leave here and go to Canada and we won't litter around. Because the rules are there, they are being enforced. If you litter, you're in trouble. You understand? If that is being done, if the authorities are going by the book, and not saying more fascinating, if you are going by the book, we will get something.
I get it.
What we use in the rural pumps, the children like it.
Yeah. It's nice.
Pedal.
It's like
yes. So it's designed to even help them to play.
Play, exercise, but they're still pumping water. But if you did something like press something,
so it must be in tune with what they do.
Sometimes what they say when you're doing research and you go to these areas and you ask them what do you want, what's your ideal neighborhood plan or something. See, it's paramount that you don't really you take certain key elements from what they say, but not everything. Because when Francis Kerry was designing his school in Burkina Faso, which is considered one of the best or most sustainable school designs in Burkina Faso, he went and he asked them what do they want. He said, we want this glass, this. No. He said, no. Where we are in Gando, we don't need glass. They use laterite bricks, built something that had a stack effect working, and to this day is still seen. He won a Pritzker Prize as one of the leading architects in the world based on that design, because it's still seen as the most sustainable design, and it still works. There's not zero maintenance since 2004. You can check it out. Zero maintenance since 2004, and use natural materials.
Yeah, I think with the research part, it's important that when these researchers have done their research and is proven to be able to work, government should adapt it into their policies. But we have a country where everybody brings their manifesto without even considering what is best, not what we. Sometimes you might want something, but it's not the best for you.
Of course.
Yes. So you consider what is the
manifestos
best.
they are meant to win elections.
Exactly.
Nothing about national whatever.
Exactly.
We'll do the national when we come to power, but if this is going to get you into power.
And I've realized something about this country is that mostly they don't really follow any development plan. They follow what they say in their manifesto. That's what I've realized about this country. So
that's what they promised.
Exactly.
That's what they would do.
Exactly. So I feel like we should, as Dr. Amankwa was saying, we should really follow that kind of development plans that are established for us, and a little bit of our promises, then we are good to go as humans. Then a little change in our
final words from each of us. What should the average listener listening to us today, this morning, this Friday, what should he do after this conversation?
After this conversation, aside being hopeful that last we'll survive, the average listener should know that you also play a part in this. You understand? Everybody in this country is playing a part in it. It's not about this politician or that politician or this policy or that policy. Once you fix your home, your neighbor will look up to you and say, okay, I need to be like A. Then he too will fix this. You realize that we extend from that angle. So let's be practical. Let's think about the things that saves our lives and those around us, and then we'll survive.
Fantastic. Doc?
We have to change our attitude towards things, maintaining government properties, and even littering about. We have to be disciplined. It's not everything you have to throw on the streets. Because when you throw on the street, it must go somewhere. Where is it going? So let's be disciplined somehow and make sure we do the right thing. You drink your sachet water. Please dispose of it properly. Because it's going to somebody's home eventually. So let's change our attitude.
Thank you very much. Mohammed, 30 seconds. You have the last word.
Yeah, so I think we should change our mindset towards greenery, and then it shouldn't look like a luxury to somebody who is, what's the name, who is rich to have that. And then I think today is Green Ghana Day, right?
Today's Green Ghana Day.
So I would recommend or hope that the average listener would plant a tree at least in their surrounding.
Plant a tree. Z Roundtable, this is the Friday edition. It's been quite an interesting discussion today, 7th June. We had Dr. Engineer Jehu Boachi Philip, is an hydrologist. Othniel Kwame Bain, who is the associate architect at Archetype, that's a design firm. Mohammed Suraj Danakabu is a civil engineer. We had Dr. Ebenezer Amankwa join us. He's an urban geographer and a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana. The discussion was on enhancing capacity and resilience to climate change. It was part 1. We'll continue the conversation sometime in the coming week, but it's been a great week so far. It's 2 minutes to the top of the hour. Coming up, it's the news at 10. So, Z in the morning, wrapping up for this week. The last time. We'll come back next week as well. And as always, we would want to leave you with the statement that pray like it only depends on God, but work like it only depends on you. We'll do this again, people, next week, God willing. Thank you so much.